Welcome everyone to another episode of Talk IES, where this time we're speaking with Grant van der Kruk from Schoolbox about his experiences during the pandemic and the importance of learning management systems today. So hi Grant, how are you and where are you speaking to us from today?
G'day Richard, really good to be part of this, and so thank you for inviting me along. Speaking from my home office in sunny Melbourne, Victoria, where no doubt many of your audience have sort of heard a bit about what's going on in the news down here, so I'm sure we'll touch on that soon.
Yeah. So thanks for giving up some of your valuable time. And so how are things there in Melbourne and Victoria with the pandemic? Because I see you've been making a few headlines last week.
Yeah, we've had like everyone, a really interesting 5 months. We were doing quite well with bringing the numbers down and flattening the curve, as they say. And then we had another quite large outbreak from contract tracing this time. And so accelerated a lot of our numbers and forced us back into quite a hard lockdown. We went to stage 3 about 4 weeks ago, and that wasn't working. So we're up in stage 4 now, and 2 weeks into that, into a 6-week stage 4 lockdown. So yeah, things are interesting here. It's it's obviously a sad situation for many. We're super lucky, firstly as a business and as a family, being very largely sort of unaffected by it in terms of health, in terms of work and stability. But just, like everyone, life just looks a little bit different right now.
Yeah, it's nice to be in one of those businesses where you can work from home and not have your job and business affected, for sure. Before I get into the questions, Grant, can you tell our audience a little bit about yourself and some of the work you've done with international schools?
Oh, yeah, sure. So I've been part of the international school community, especially in Asia and other parts of the world to a lesser degree, probably the last 8 or 9 years. I started the Australian arm of a furniture business out of New Zealand called Furnware, which many of your audience will recognise, and then moved into the Asia market based in Singapore. So I've got a pretty deep connection with many international schools through Asia, and it's been an absolute joy to support education as a whole, as an industry. I grew up with many teachers around me, including family and many of my friends, and put my hand up very early to say that's not for me. I don't have those abilities, but certainly the education market for me is I'm very passionate about supporting and doing what I can. And so now with Schoolbox for just over 2 years, I'm the general manager, largely responsible for the overall business performance, but largely the strategy in where we're headed. And international school market in Asia is certainly something that we've been in already before me coming on board. But obviously, with my experience and understanding, we feel that we're really fit for that market, and there's a real appetite. Obviously forced appetite now, I guess, but there's certainly some opportunities for us and for schools to take on our technology.
Sure. So what has yours and Schoolbox's experience been over the last 5 months with the pandemic?
Yeah, as I mentioned before, it's been really, really interesting. I guess going back from the start, we're all keenly watching in January and February, and then obviously the first lockdowns happened in March, certainly here in Australia. Gladly, and I guess we're really proud that most of our schools, or if not all of our schools, it was quite a seamless process for schools moving into remote learning. Our platform obviously enables remote learning as a native part to our product. And so, our schools have a really strong blended approach to their teaching and learning. And so obviously the ratio of in-class and if you want to call it on screen, changed significantly with that. But from a platform perspective and delivery of teaching and learning, it was really quite unaffected. And so we had obviously schools and including ourselves needing just to look into the infrastructure from a technology perspective, that it can handle the bandwidth and handle the loads. First 2 or 3 weeks, we learned a lot about what that load would be and when during a day that would happen. And so we quickly pivoted to ensure that that was quite a unimpacted part to using Schoolbox. We have, I guess, in terms of some stats and in terms of what we saw taking place was the social interactions on our platform. If you think about students and you think about their time in a classroom, they're constantly interacting, collaborating, socializing. And so schools and students wanted to replicate that. And a really important part to that is certainly from an engagement perspective, I guess schools don't want that to be moved over to social platforms like Twitter or Facebook or TikTok for want of better product. So our social stream feature was really used heavily. We went from before COVID, so our new norm, our pre-COVID norm of around 1 million interactions per day on average across our fleet of customers. Within 3 months, that grew fourfold. So we're hitting 4 million social interactions on the platform per day, which just goes to show that students need connection, students need to chat and collaborate. It's a significant part to their schooling experience. And so that was really interesting for us. We didn't predict that would happen. Our due work components and obviously took a really big spike, and overall engagement has tripled in that time. So we did predict there would be a steady rise, given that the nature of how schools have had to operate in the last 5 months. But you know, Schoolbox was a native part of their school day to day. So we knew engagement would increase, but threefold is great, which speaks for us. If we have a look at it deeply, in any school you have your innovators and you have your teachers that will adopt the digital platforms a lot quicker and a lot deeper, and then you have the teachers and people in the community from an intermediate perspective, and from those that are challenged by it a little bit more. And this obviously forced those that are a little bit scared of digital platforms, or those that didn't use it as much, to use it more significantly. And for us, that's a big success for us, because that means that the students and the parents are getting a richer experience through the platform. And you know, obviously the platform was in place already in all of our schools, and so that created not just that seamless process, but also coming out of it, it's put the school in a much better position to continue no matter what the circumstances.
Right. So with your long history in these international school markets, firstly, as you said, in learning space design, and now in the virtual environment, how do you see schools, and particularly international schools, adapting and evolving into the future?
Yeah, I guess I've been thinking about this over the weekend, and a term that keeps coming into my head is the Kodak moment. And I kind of feel that this is education's Kodak moment, where whether you respect or understand the challenges that are coming from this, but the opportunity that is coming from this, and certainly from international perspective, where large expat communities will be moving around due to many things, due to what's happening in political zones, and there will be a fair movement. So there's a range of things that are happening. I guess the biggest thing is that we can't control. No one can control the external factors that are happening, and whether it's a pandemic. We've had a lot of bushfires here in Australia as well at the start of the year, which impacted schooling. Who knows, other natural disasters. So we can't really control what happens there. What we can control is being fit and ready for what might happen. And from a digital perspective, that enables a huge amount of flexibility, whether the physical environment of a school is affected by anything that's happening or not. Having a strong blended approach or a deliberate design from an ed tech tool perspective is becoming obviously a really, really important part to what's happening in the school environment. I saw something on socials on the weekend, how one school had dealt with lockdown and how they're dealing with lockdown, and I saw a sea of paper bags filled with activity books and printed collateral and material, and I just thought to myself, I'm not sure they get it, because that is basically doing the same thing that they're doing in the classroom, but sending those kids home. And I guess that resonated in my mind as the Kodak moment. How are schools looking at this? Are they looking at it as a challenge and just getting through it, or are they looking at this as an opportunity and looking to the future of how school will look and adapting and putting some plans into place? So yeah, it's going to be a really interesting 18 months to 2 years in the immediate term coming out of this. But then in the long term, I think schools and schooling has changed forever, Richard, and no doubt you're seeing that, and no doubt that many of your colleagues and partners are sensing that. And so schools have an opportunity to look at where they're putting their priorities in, putting their funding, putting their focus. And I just say to schools, be be careful about this next 18 months to 2 years, and get the right advice and be close to people like yourselves and IES to understand what's happening across the whole scheme, because things are going to change. If you look at the learning space perspective, I don't think whether the virtual or physical, I think both are going to be around for quite some time. I don't think this is the death knell for a physical school at all. What I do think this is the big disruptor, and understanding how your school environments or what your physical buildings are going to be used for. Take corporate world, take the office environment. That's been through many transitions in the last sort of 5 to 10 years, where the whole work from home culture started to come in, and many sort of leading organisations enabled that and assisted that to get that much better balance from a work environment and a home life. And what we saw was that being in that sort of corporate space as well for a few years, we saw that staff were coming back to the office because they needed to find that real balance. But it was what they're coming back to the office for. They're coming back to the office for collaboration, connection, social interaction, not so much that focus work where they can sit there in their home office or sit there in a quiet environment and I guess do the doing. And I sort of take that as a potential framing for what the school environment might end up being. As I said, I don't think the school environment is going away anytime soon, but there might be changes to what that's used for and what the spaces are used for.
Yeah, I think there's definitely that Kodak moment, as you say, where particularly elementary school teachers, for their what we call the second semester of the International School Academic Year, there was a definite fear factor with technology, and I think this summer schools will be preparing and coming back to a much different situation around their attitude to technology. So, I mean, what is your message and recommendations to those schools that are now preparing to mature and grow their digital environments?
Oh, the first thing I'd say is don't rush. Don't jump straight into a platform because you think it's going to solve all your problems. As a representative of a technology company, I've learned very quickly that one platform will not solve all your needs in the school environment. Right. It just won't. And if companies are coming out and saying it will, that's a sales pitch. It really is, because it just really won't. And it's certainly in a sophisticated environment like an international school market. And so I always say in my learning space history, in my EdTech current, that pedagogy has to come first. That has to drive all of your decisions. The technology that you utilize is the how. You need to be really strong on the why and the what, and let that dictate what you choose and what you select. I guess a key part to that, and what we've seen coming out of that first sort of stage of lockdown, we're obviously back in it now, when schools poke their head up again and say, we weren't prepared, and of course they weren't going to be prepared for what we've experienced, but some schools were, and many schools are saying, we weren't prepared, we need to fix this now. And it's really interesting to hear what the major pain points were during that time. We thought that schools would come out and say, we weren't prepared to offer a seamless, synchronous and asynchronous opportunities for our staff and our students. We thought that would be the strongest pain point coming out of this. And it is, but the strongest pain point coming out of this is their ability to communicate with their parent body has become the biggest issue in the schools that we're talking with. So my second point is, don't forget the parents. Yeah. The parents are a super important part of the school environment, not just from an international school perspective. That is your customer. At the end of the day, that is your customer. Think about how you're engaging them in the day-to-day of the school. From a Schoolbox perspective, we look at it as how are we enabling the parent to be part of their child's education journey? How are they connected? How are they understanding what their children are facing for the next day, for the next week, from an activity perspective or due work perspective? Enabling parent groups to be able to communicate effectively, not on your Facebooks or your Twitters or your WeChats, doing that in a really well supported environment like Schoolbox, but there's others out there. Don't forget your parents. It's super important, and it should be one of the keys to your requirements list when you do put that together to mature your I guess we call it your ed stack or your digital tools. And the third point I really want to make is that integration, and I don't want to get too technical here, integrations are absolutely critical. Your data from a school perspective needs to be able to be utilized in many, many different tools. And so selecting the tools as an ecosystem, not your favorite tool and then build everything around it, selecting your tools as an ecosystem so that there's a seamless data flow is absolutely critical to the experience that all staff have to how much of an operation you need to manually do, which you want to decrease, if not have a very, very small component, and the experience of the parents. So integrations are absolutely critical. And if I want to, if I dare say that batch API as an absolute minimum from a tech perspective, which is an automated synchronization of data from a daily perspective. That has to be the minimum for it to be a really successful ecosystem.
Well, Grant, thank you so much. There's some great insights there, and I think you're spot on about the parents. I'm a parent of 3 as well, and I think my kids' school do a great job in communicating with me and helping me with the short amount of hours that we have in a day to help the children. So thanks for that. We wish you very well there in Melbourne, and I hope the lockdown is over soon. You've got another 4 weeks to go, is that right?
Another 4 weeks. Numbers are still relatively high. Unfortunately, death rates aren't great, so it might be a bit longer, but hey, we're lucky to be healthy and still doing work and have our family around us. So thanks for the kind words. I do appreciate it. Yeah,
no, all the best. All right, and I hope to see you in the not too distant future at a IES or it's April 2021. We've got our site set on IES in Bangkok, I think, for the next conference. But I don't think there'll be much before then, will there?
I don't think so, and I'd love for April to be the first time that we can travel internationally. That would be a big celebration.
It will be,
and we would love to do that, but not counting our chickens just yet. But
true.
That'd be fantastic to see you there.
All right, Grant. You take care, and lovely to talk to you, Dave. Thanks for your time.
Not a problem. Thanks, Richard.
All the best. Bye for now.